Let me tell you something that might sting a little, but it'll wake you up. You are not lazy because you lack talent. You're lazy because you've allowed the wrong patterns to run your life. And here's the truth. Any pattern that's been created can be destroyed and rebuilt. Laziness is not a personality trait. It's a loop, a habit loop of comfort, hesitation, and distraction. You wake up, you feel tired. You scroll, you delay, and before you know it, another day's gone. And if you let that happen long enough, it starts defining your life. But you are not meant to live in survival mode. You are built for purpose, not passivity. Now, here's what most people don't understand. Energy doesn't come from energy drinks or motivation videos. It comes from purpose. You move faster when what you're chasing means something to you. Emotion creates motion. The reason you're still stuck is because you haven't tied your actions to something that sets your soul on fire. You haven't connected your daily tasks to a future that excites you. The next thing is this. Your standards are silently deciding your fate. If you accept excuses, if you let yourself skip the workout, if you keep saying, I'll start tomorrow, then tomorrow becomes next week, and next week becomes next year. Raise your standard. Make laziness unacceptable. Tell yourself, this is no longer who I am. But here's the trap. You can have all the fire in the world, but if your environment is built to distract you, you're going to lose. Your phone, your room, your friends, your social media, these things shape your energy. They either pull you toward growth or numb you into delay. Want to kill laziness? Start by mastering your space. Surround yourself with drive, not distractions. Now let's talk about discipline. Everyone talks about motivation, but that's not what gets you results. Motivation comes and goes. Discipline is built through repetition. Do it when you don't feel like it. Do it when no one's clapping. That's where your new identity is formed. The person you admire, the one who gets things done, they're not more gifted than you. They're just more consistent. And this is the final shift. Start living for your future self, not your current mood. The person you want to become, the stronger, sharper, more alive version of you, is begging you to show up today. Not perfectly, just consistently. When you start acting like the future version of yourself, laziness can't survive. You stop choosing what's easy and start choosing what builds you. So let me ask you now, how much longer are you going to let the old version of you make decisions for your life? The comfort zone feels good in the moment, but is quietly stealing your potential. This is the moment you draw the line. You kill laziness by starving it. You take control of your life by deciding that from this moment on, you move, you rise, you take back your time, your focus, and your power. Because nothing changes until you do. You've probably told yourself at some point, I'm just lazy, as if laziness is some fixed part of your identity. But here's what most people don't understand. It's not who you are, it's what you've repeated. Laziness isn't a flaw in your character, it's a deeply ingrained pattern. And the more you reinforce that pattern through behavior, the more it becomes part of your automatic identity. But if something can be trained into you, it can also be trained out. That's the starting point of change. Because if you believe laziness is who you are, you'll never try to fight it. But if you realize it's just a habit loop, a pattern, you can break it. You can dismantle it and rebuild something stronger in its place. Every habit, every behavior, and every reaction in your life is rooted in repetition. The first time you skip a task, procrastinate on a decision, or scroll instead of showing up, your brain takes note. It feels a little guilty at first, maybe a little anxious, but it also feels comfort, and that comfort becomes familiar. Familiarity becomes preference. And over time, preference becomes identity. You've trained your nervous system to choose comfort over progress. That's all laziness is. A system of shortcuts and mental rehearsals your brain clings to because it's easier than effort. This isn't about shame or judgment. It's about awareness. You didn't consciously choose to become lazy. It wasn't one decision. It was a series of small decisions that went unnoticed. A few extra minutes in bed. One more episode. Putting off the workout until tomorrow. And over time, those micro decisions built a macro reality. They created the version of you that now feels stuck, tired, unmotivated. But that version of you is not final. It's just rehearsed. What you rehearse, you reinforce. So if you want to change your reality, you have to interrupt the rehearsals. You have to start rewiring your brain to seek progress instead of avoiding pain. That means you must become hyper-aware of your patterns, not in a vague way, but in a detailed, precise way. When do you procrastinate most? What triggers it? What time of day? What's your body language like when you're putting things off? Laziness thrives in unconscious repetition. The moment you shine a spotlight on it, you strip it of its power. Now here's where science backs this up. Your brain has a reward system that craves dopamine, the chemical that gives you a sense of pleasure and satisfaction. The problem is, quick hits like scrolling, junk food, or endless entertainment flood your brain with dopamine with little effort. So your brain gets addicted to easy wins. That's the biochemical side of laziness. You've trained your brain to seek maximum pleasure with minimum investment. And unless you consciously shift what your brain finds rewarding, you'll keep choosing laziness, not because you want to, but because your system is rigged for it. So what's the antidote? You have to teach your brain to enjoy the grind. You have to make effort feel good again. And the only way to do that is to start winning at small, controlled levels. Make your bed, take a cold shower, finish that one task you've been putting off. Not because these things will change your life by themselves, but because they send a new message to your nervous system. I'm in control now. Each tiny action becomes a vote for a different identity. And when you stack enough of those votes, you create momentum. And when you build momentum, you build belief. Belief is everything. Because if you believe laziness is who you are, you won't try. But when you begin to see it as something you do, and more importantly, something you can undo, you unlock your power. The key is consistency. You don't kill laziness by doing one hard thing once. You kill it by doing one intentional thing every day until laziness becomes unnatural, until action feels automatic, until you no longer identify as the person who tries to change, but as the person who has changed. This isn't magic. This is mastery. It's psychology. It's neuroscience. And it's the brutal honesty of taking responsibility for the patterns you've allowed and deciding to rewrite them. You don't need a miracle. You need to interrupt the pattern. You need to break the cycle and replace it with something real, something lasting, something rooted in self-respect. Because once you do that, you stop negotiating with your potential. You stop making room for excuses, and you start building a life that moves, a life that creates, a life that proves. Every single day, that laziness was never who you were. It was just a pattern you forgot to challenge. People think they need more motivation to get moving. They wait for it like it's supposed to fall from the sky, hoping one morning they'll wake up bursting with energy, ready to conquer everything on their list. But that moment rarely comes. And when it does, it doesn't last. Why? Because motivation isn't what truly moves people. Emotion does. The depth of emotion you attach to something is what gives it power. And if your goals are just logical and not emotional, you'll never feel the pull strong enough to override laziness. You don't act based on what's smart. You act based on what you feel. That's the truth about human behavior. You know you should work out. You know you should study. You know you should start the business, wake up earlier, stop procrastinating. But knowledge alone doesn't spark action. If it did, everyone with a book or a YouTube video would be unstoppable. The real difference lies in emotional leverage. If there's no urgency, no passion, no personal meaning behind a task, your brain doesn't prioritize it. That's why most people stay stuck. They know what to do, but they don't feel why they must do it. The mind is driven by the desire to avoid pain and gain pleasure. And here's where most people fall into a trap. They unconsciously associate more pain to taking action than staying still. Working out feels hard. Waking up early feels uncomfortable. Taking a risk feels scary. So they delay. They choose comfort now and pain later. But that decision is based on short-term emotion not long-term outcome. And that's the exact mindset laziness feeds on. It whispers, you can do it later, because later doesn't hurt. Not yet. To flip the script, you have to rewire what your brain links pain and pleasure to. That means you must learn to emotionally anchor pleasure to discipline and massive pain to inaction. You've got to look at what staying lazy actually costs you, not just in productivity, but in your confidence, your self-respect, your goals, your future. Because when you emotionally connect to that loss, when you really feel it, not just think it, but feel it in your gut, something shifts. The pain of staying the same becomes greater than the pain of change. That's when laziness dies, because your brain no longer sees action as something to avoid. It sees it as a necessity. Emotion creates urgency. If you've ever had a moment in your life when you were on fire, when you didn't wait, you didn't think twice, you just moved, it was because something stirred your emotions. Maybe it was desperation. Maybe it was inspiration. Maybe someone told you couldn't do it and you had to prove them wrong. Whatever it was, it activated something deeper than logic. It activated your drive. And that drive came from emotion, not thought. You can't fight laziness with logic. You fight it by feeling something powerful enough to override the excuses. You have to tie your actions to something bigger than the task itself. You're not just going to the gym. You're proving to yourself that you don't quit on your health. You're not just studying. You're building the future no one else will hand you. You're not just getting up early. You're showing your younger self that you respect their dreams. When your reason is emotional, your movement becomes automatic. You no longer negotiate with yourself because your heart is louder than your mind. But let's be clear. This isn't about being emotional all the time. It's about using emotion strategically. Create rituals that remind you of what's at stake. Look at your goals daily. Visualize the pain of staying stuck and the power of rising. Watch your language, because your words shape your emotional state. Don't say, I have to. Say, I get to. Say, this matters. Say, this changes everything. You're not trying to convince your brain. You're trying to activate it. Because once you attach meaning to movement, your energy shifts. Laziness can't survive in the presence of purpose. Not when the fire inside you is greater than the resistance around you. The people who get the most done, who move with intensity, aren't superhuman. They've just tied their actions to a story that lights them up. They don't rely on motivation. They rely on emotion. They've learned that when you feel it, you'll fight for it. When you own it emotionally, your body follows. So the next time you're stuck, don't ask for more motivation. Ask, what am I not feeling yet? What emotion have I failed to connect to this goal? Because once you find that emotion, once you attach deep personal meaning to the action in front of you, your body will start to move. And laziness will no longer be an option. Your life is a direct reflection of what you've decided to tolerate. That's a hard truth, but it's the truth. The standard you hold for yourself determines the behavior you allow. And that standard becomes the invisible script running your day-to-day decisions. If your standard is low, you'll let laziness creep in. And it won't feel wrong. It'll feel normal. And the moment laziness feels normal, you stop fighting it. You make peace with your own underperformance. You justify it. You say things like, I'm just tired, or I'll start tomorrow, or at least I'm doing something. Not realizing those phrases are killing your potential one compromise at a time. High achievers don't have more time. They don't have some magical energy source. What they have is a higher standard, a different level of what they accept from themselves. It's not about being perfect. It's about being consistent with what matters. And that consistency comes from deciding what is and isn't acceptable for your life. Laziness doesn't stand a chance when your identity won't tolerate it. People say they want to change, but deep down, they haven't raised the bar. They still allow too much wiggle room. They're still negotiating with themselves every morning. They still entertain the idea that effort is optional. But here's the thing. If you leave the door open for laziness, even a crack, It will walk in and take over because laziness loves comfort. And comfort is seductive when your standards are weak. You have to slam that door shut. You have to decide that certain behaviors are no longer welcome in your life, not because you're trying to be someone else, but because you're finally choosing to become the version of yourself you were meant to be. Raising your standards isn't just about working harder. It's about expecting more from yourself in the areas that matter. It's about deciding that excuses no longer belong in your vocabulary. That quitting halfway isn't a personality trait, it's a temporary habit you're done with. That showing up late, skipping workouts, procrastinating on important goals, all those things aren't you anymore. They don't match your identity. And once they don't match your identity, your brain starts rejecting them automatically. That's where change gets real. You see, behavior follows identity. If your identity says, I'm someone who finishes what I start, you'll push through the resistance. If your identity says, I'm someone who lives with discipline, you won't wait to feel ready, you'll move anyway. But if your identity says, I'm someone who struggles with motivation, or I'm just a procrastinator, you'll live up to that version of yourself without even thinking. The only way to upgrade your life is to upgrade the standards that shape that identity. Most people set goals, but they don't raise standards. That's why they fail. A goal without a standard is just a wish. You might want to get fit, build a business, wake up early, be more focused, but if your standard still allows you to hit snooze, scroll for hours, eat poorly, and avoid discomfort, then the goal means nothing. You haven't made a decision. You've made a hope. And hope without discipline is dead on arrival. So how do you raise your standard? It starts by deciding what's no longer acceptable in your life. You draw a line. You say, this version of me dies here. Not in a dramatic way, but in a real, non-negotiable way. And then you reinforce that new standard every day through behavior. It doesn't have to be massive. You don't have to transform overnight. But every time you act in alignment with the new standard, even in small ways, you send a powerful message to your brain. This is who I am now. Change doesn't stick when it's fueled by pressure. It sticks when it's aligned with identity. And the fastest way to reshape identity is to commit to a higher standard and live it over and over until your nervous system gets the message. You don't have to fight laziness every day if you simply stop giving it a place to live. You stop giving it oxygen. You stop feeding it with exceptions and justifications. You don't need more time. You need fewer excuses. When your standard becomes, I don't tolerate laziness, something shifts. Your actions catch up. Your energy rises. Your confidence builds. You don't need someone to hold you accountable. You become accountable to yourself. And that kind of ownership, that level of personal integrity, is where laziness dies and leadership begins. Most people blame themselves for being lazy, not realizing that their environment is silently scripting their actions. Your surroundings shape your energy, your focus, your drive, even your decisions. Whether you like it or not, you are constantly being influenced by what you see, what you hear, who you're around, and what you allow into your space. Laziness doesn't always come from a lack of will. It often comes from an environment that encourages inactivity and rewards comfort. If your environment is built to distract, you will be distracted. If it's designed for comfort, you'll default to ease. And over time, you start thinking the problem is you, when really, you've been fighting against the current the entire time. There's a reason highly productive people fiercely protect their space. It's not about being obsessive. It's about understanding the science. Your brain is constantly scanning your environment for cues, signals, and patterns. If every time you sit at your desk, you open a new tab to scroll, or you keep your phone within arm's reach, you're training your brain to associate that space with avoidance, not action. If your room is cluttered, if your notifications are always on, if your workspace is shared with entertainment, your focus never stands a chance. You're not failing. You're trying to focus in a place designed for distraction. Think about this. The average person checks their phone over 100 times a day, not because they want to, but because their environment allows it. The phone's within reach. The apps are engineered to pull attention. The lighting, the sounds, the vibration, they all send a signal. Interrupt yourself now. And then we wonder why we can't concentrate. Your environment is either setting you up for success or sabotaging your momentum. There is no neutral ground. The background matters more than people think. What you surround yourself with becomes what you settle into. If you want to kill laziness, one of the fastest ways is to redesign the space around you. You don't need a new house. You need new boundaries. Rearrange your workspace. Remove visual clutter. Keep your phone in another room during focused work. Put your workout clothes where you can see them. Set up your kitchen for healthy choices. Make your environment reflect the behavior you want, not the behavior you're trying to escape. Because every time you change your space, you change what your brain expects. And expectation drives behavior more than discipline ever will. The same goes for people. Your circle is part of your environment too. Spend enough time around people who normalize procrastination, laziness, and excuse making, and you'll start calling it balance instead of calling it out. But surround yourself with people who live with urgency, who are always evolving, who challenge you, and suddenly your own pace speeds up. You grow by association. If your environment doesn't challenge you, it will sedate you. And sedated people don't build powerful lives, they survive through them. You also have to watch your digital environment. What you watch, what you follow, what you scroll through, it all programs your subconscious. You might think you're just being entertained, but your brain is being trained. If you're constantly consuming content that promotes comfort, indulgence, and instant gratification, guess what you'll crave? That exact same thing. And when it's time to push yourself, your body resists. It's not a willpower problem. It's an input problem. Garbage in, garbage out. Redesigning your environment doesn't mean stripping all joy from your life. It means creating intentional contrast, a place for focus, a space for rest, a setup for momentum. It means thinking ahead. If you know that sitting on the couch at 6 p.m. will lead to 3 hours of TV, then don't go near the couch until after your workout. If you know that your mornings are chaotic, then prep the night before. Create friction around the habits you want to break. Make laziness inconvenient. Make discipline convenient. When success is easier than failure, you'll win more often. The truth is, people don't rise to the level of their goals. They fall to the level of their systems. And your environment is the foundation of that system. You can have all the ambition in the world, but if you live in chaos, if you're surrounded by distractions, if your world is built to comfort you instead of grow you, then laziness will always win. You don't overcome laziness by fighting it in your mind alone. You beat it by building an environment where action becomes the default, where doing the hard thing is just what happens next. Because once your environment supports your purpose, you don't have to push as hard. You start flowing instead of forcing. You stop dragging yourself to act, and you start being pulled forward by the space you created. That's when change becomes automatic. That's when laziness dies quietly, not because you overpowered it, but because you outgrew it. Laziness doesn't get defeated by motivation. It gets defeated by repetition. Too many people wait to feel ready before they act, but that's not how the human mind is designed to function at its best. If you only take action when you feel like it, you'll stay stuck in a cycle of inconsistency and guilt. You'll keep starting and stopping. You'll have short bursts of effort followed by long stretches of delay. The secret isn't about feeling inspired all the time. The real secret is showing up whether you feel like it or not until that action becomes a part of who you are. Discipline is not some superpower reserved for the few. It's not born, it's built. And it's built in the trenches through doing the things you don't want to do when the excitement is gone. Repetition is what turns effort into identity. The more you do something, the less resistance you face. Your brain begins to adapt. The activity that once felt uncomfortable becomes natural. And this is where people misunderstand discipline. It's not about forcing yourself endlessly. It's about getting to a place where what once felt hard becomes automatic. But you don't reach that place without a season of repetition, even when it's inconvenient, even when no one is watching. In the beginning, discipline feels unnatural because your mind and body are addicted to ease. You've been living in a world where convenience is king. Instant gratification is everywhere. Everything is built to make things quicker, easier, and more pleasurable. So when you choose discomfort, when you choose to get up early, to train your body, to push past distractions, it feels like resistance. But what you're really doing is rewiring your brain. You're giving yourself a new standard to live by. You're teaching your nervous system that consistency matters more than comfort. And here's the truth. Discipline gets easier, but only if you earn it through repetition. Most people never stick with it long enough to see that breakthrough. They quit at the first sign of resistance. They tell themselves the lie that they're not motivated enough or that they just aren't wired that way, but that's not true. What's really happening is that they haven't been consistent long enough to feel the momentum. Because repetition doesn't just change behavior, it changes belief. It reshapes the way you see yourself. Each time you show up, you're casting a vote for the kind of person you want to become. And when you've cast enough votes, you no longer have to force yourself. You just act in alignment with the identity you've already built. Laziness doesn't die because you had one powerful day. It dies because you had 100 average ones that you didn't skip. It dies in the quiet moments, the unseen hours, the days when nobody's clapping, but you still get the job done. The grind is not glamorous, but it's sacred. It's where the gap between who you are and who you could be gets closed, little by little, brick by brick. And if you want a life that rises above mediocrity, you've got to be willing to do ordinary things with extraordinary consistency. The best performers in the world don't rely on motivation. They rely on habits. They don't decide each day whether they're going to act. They've already decided once, and now they're just honoring that decision over and over again. They've built systems that support their mission. And here's the good news. You can do that too. Start with one habit, one routine, one ritual you follow no matter what. Make it so small that it's impossible to fail. Then repeat it until your brain no longer sees it as optional. It becomes your new normal. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be consistent, because consistency compounds. Small wins stack up. They become the foundation of something massive. And the truth is, it's not the big, bold moves that change your life. It's the quiet daily disciplines you think no one notices. But you notice. Your confidence notices. Your momentum notices. And eventually, so does the world. Repetition is the great equalizer. It doesn't care where you came from. It doesn't care how you feel today. It only rewards one thing: action. And the more you act, the stronger you become. Not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Discipline is forged through fire, and repetition is the flame. So if you want to kill laziness, stop waiting to feel ready. Stop hoping for motivation to save you. Just show up again and again and again until the world no longer sees you as someone trying to change, but as someone who already has. One of the greatest traps people fall into is letting their current emotions dictate their actions. They make decisions based on how they feel right now instead of who they want to become. That's where laziness wins, when you live according to the moment, not according to your mission. Because the truth is, the person you are today is not always going to feel like doing the hard things. But the person you want to become, they already live on the other side of discipline. The challenge is bridging that gap, acting from the mindset of your future identity instead of your current emotions. Right now, your brain is wired for comfort. It wants safety. It wants ease. It wants to avoid anything that feels uncertain, uncomfortable, or difficult. So when it's time to wake up early, push through the workout, finish the project, or take that risk, it starts negotiating. It whispers, not now, let's wait. Let's rest. Let's do it tomorrow. And if you obey those signals, you strengthen the identity of someone who backs down. The more you listen to your feelings, the more you feed the version of you that stays the same. But the moment you start making decisions based on who you want to become, not how you feel, you create an identity shift. That's the difference between staying stuck and becoming unstoppable. You don't overcome laziness by fighting it every time it shows up. You overcome it by becoming the kind of person who no longer entertains it. The kind of person who moves forward not because they feel motivated, but because they've made a decision to live a different story. When your identity is rooted in purpose, your actions stop depending on convenience. And that's when laziness loses its grip. You start to move not out of pressure, but out of alignment. Your behavior begins to match your vision. The reason most people stay trapped in laziness isn't because they're weak. It's because they're still identifying with the version of themselves that's scared to grow. They're stuck in their past. They carry old beliefs like, I always quit, or I can't focus, or I've never been disciplined. And those beliefs become identity. But the truth is, you're not bound to who you were. You're building who you're becoming. Every decision you make is either a vote for the old you or the new you. The question is, who are you casting your votes for? You have to become emotionally connected to your future. You have to see yourself clearly, not just where you are, but where you're going. Visualize it, feel it, speak it. Let it become so real that it pulls you forward. Because when your future is stronger than your current temptation, you win. And here's the thing. Your mind is always looking for leadership. If you don't lead it, it will follow whatever emotion shows up first. But if you lead it with vision, intention, and commitment, your body will follow. Most people are living in reaction mode. They wake up and respond to the day. They check their phone and get pulled in 100 directions. They wait to feel right before they do what matters. But if you want to take control of your life, you have to reverse that. You don't respond to life, you direct it. You set the tone. You decide what gets your energy. And that decision starts by asking yourself one simple question. What would the highest version of me do right now? That question is powerful because it bypasses your excuses and taps directly into your identity. It doesn't care how tired you are. It doesn't care what your past looked like. It doesn't care what's convenient. It cares about alignment. That version of you, the one who's confident, focused, relentless, that version already exists. You just have to show up as them long enough for the world to catch up. And that means taking action that reflects your future, not your fatigue. Laziness fades when you stop living by feeling and start living by identity. It's not about never resting. Rest is sacred. But there's a difference between rest and retreat. One refuels you. The other robs you. You know which one you're doing. If you want to take control of your life, you have to stop letting your emotions lead and start letting your purpose lead. The world won't hand you your best self. You have to build it. Choice by choice, day by day, action by action. Because when your daily decisions start honoring your future, something shifts. You stop fighting for your limitations and start fighting for your legacy. You stop reacting like the old you and start acting like the new one. And that's when laziness is no longer a battle. It's just a memory of who you used to be.